Welcome. You're listening to Ask the Doulas, a podcast where we talk to experts from all over the country about topics related to pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and early parenting. Let's chat.
Hello. This is Kristin with Ask the Doulas, and I am so excited to chat with Gina Mundy today. Gina is an attorney, an author, a parent, and a partner. And not only is Gina an author, but she's a best-selling author. So welcome to Ask the Doulas, Gina.
Thank you, Kristin, for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
Would love to hear a bit more about your background. So your specialty is so unique as an attorney. And I also saw in your bio that you're located in my home state of Michigan. So fill us in a bit about how you started to work with the OB-GYN cases specifically.
Oh, sure. So yeah, I'm in Clarkston, Michigan. So I was happy to hear you were West Side. I love the West Side. Head out there all the time. So I'm an attorney specializing in childbirth cases. And this is something that I've done now for almost 21 years. I got my first case in February 2003. And a lot of people don't really understand what exactly that is. But basically, these cases involve the birth of a baby, and unfortunately, it's when something goes wrong. Whether it's a complication, it's a mistake, something happens and baby's not born healthy, and sometimes baby doesn't make it during childbirth. And in some very sad cases, I've had it where mom hasn't made it through childbirth. So my job as the attorney is to come in and say what happened, what went wrong, but more importantly, what should have been done so baby would have been born healthy? What should have been done so mom would have been around to raise her baby? So those questions have taken me across the United States many, many times, meeting with doctors in all different hospital systems, meeting not just with doctors, but the entire labor and delivery teams, the midwives, the nurses, anesthesiology, you name it. If they're part of a delivery team, with the exception of doulas, as we talked about in pre-show, I have never had a doula in a case in almost 21 years. So you guys are definitely doing something right for your clients, which I'd like to talk about, more later on. But anyway, so I have all of this experience, and we had basically my niece pregnant, and this was in March, a couple of years ago, and she just had a very scary birth. And we went about 20 minutes not knowing, is baby going to make it? Is baby not going to make it? Wow. And, I get this phone call from my sister, and she's like, I'm expecting to say, hey, Sam just had the baby, everything's great. And instead she's hysterically screaming on the phone, oh, no. The baby crashed. And I'm 1,100 miles away, and I'm listening to her, and almost 20 years of experience is just going through my head. I'm legal analysis on what just happened. But then it was like this human analysis, like, oh my goodness, this is how the families feel when something goes wrong during childbirth.
Absolutely.
So I had this kind of aha moment where, like, oh my gosh, I may know something because of what I've done with these birthing cases. So we got news, did put it out there. We got news baby was going to be okay. I do have children. It did scare me for a minute that I wouldn't be around for the birth of my kids, especially, again, knowing what I know, how my kids will be prepped for childbirth will be different than any traditional family.
Oh, so, absolutely.
Yeah. So I decided to take some of that knowledge that I've gained over these years as a childbirth attorney and write a book to expecting parents and even grandparents. Grandparents are just loving my book, which makes sense because I did write this book kind of for my kids to make sure I have healthy grandkids.
Yes,
but I wrote
it makes sense that they would want to read it, of course.
Yes, I know, right? And it's written, we're probably same generation and all that stuff. But I wrote this book to, make sure that these mistakes and complications that I've seen over almost 21 years don't happen during the birth of a baby, because a lot of these are mistakes that are reoccurring, stuff that I talk about in the book. So basically I show parents how to make sure these mistakes and complications don't happen during the birth of their baby, because obviously, when the baby is born, that is such a powerful moment in life. And it's a powerful moment that is the start to whole nother chapter of your life, and you want it to be the best.
Right. You don't get a do-over of that particular birth.
You don't get a do-over. So I wrote the book, basically how to have a safer childbirth. So a parent's guide to a safer childbirth. And it was just published in June 2023.
So recent. Congrats.
It is, but I think people are really gravitating to it, especially so I checked my Amazon reviews. A lot of dads are reading it. They want to step in and protect their wife and child, and grandparents are coming in and leaving the reviews. It's been really fascinating to see who's been writing or reading the books. I did try to aim it towards moms a little bit, which they are reading it too, but so is everyone else. So it's been exciting.
Well, I can't wait to use that as a reference for the Gold Coast doula team as we're talking with clients about recommended reading resources, and our Becoming a Mother students are always looking for good evidence-based information to prep for childbirth and certainly early parenting.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And
so how can we find your book? You said Amazon. Where else are you? Are you in some bookstores? Can we find your book off of your website?
So you can go to ginamundy.com and GINAMUNDY. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, .com. And that'll take you to where you can buy my book, but it is available really just now on Amazon. It's so new. It's such a process getting your book pushed out. And I'm still a partner in a law firm. I'm still a practicing attorney. I'm still a mom of 3. I still make dinner every night.
You're juggling so many different roles.
Shopping. I worked out at 5 a.m. I'm grocery shopping by 6:15 a.m. So it's hard because a lot of it falls back even on me trying to get it out.
Yeah.
But it's on Amazon. And I think it has like over 250 reviews too. So that's
awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
So what tips do you have to plan and prepare for a healthy childbirth? You had talked about witnessing and representing tragic cases. What is your advice? And I'm sure it's in the book, but just to give our listeners a sample of what they can do to better prepare themselves outside of hiring a doula, of course.
Right. So chapter 1 of my book are the lessons learned from baby cases. So these are the lessons that we can take away from the families, the medical teams, the medical experts, basically on how to have a safer childbirth. So I listed all of those lessons, and then each lesson in chapter 1 is then a subsequent chapter, which kind of then elaborates on each individual lesson. So I'm just going to put it out there. I think chapter 1 is absolutely so important for expecting parents to read that I have it. Yes. So all of your lessons, this is what you can learn and this is what you need to know. If you want to read more, I even put like another chapter up there, but whatnot. But these are your basics that you really need to know. So if you go to my website, you can grab it. It's free. It's downloadable. It's shareable, whatnot. But it's definitely, that is, big reason I wrote this book is because when I have met these families, it is the hardest part of my job when a preventable mistake takes the life of a precious baby or a mom. There's no way to come back. So these lessons are so important. I cannot emphasize it enough. But for instance, lesson number 1 from the families and learning about labor and delivery, learning about childbirth before you get to the hospital. In all of my cases, the families just roll up to labor and delivery and they're like, I'm here. And that's it. They're not ready. Now,
right.
When you have to talk to them years later, they know so much more in the aftermath of something bad happening. It's heartbreaking because if they would have known this ahead of time, then very possible that, maybe they would have had a different outcome. So it's learning about your options. And, and unfortunately it's like, it's a mentality I think we're all guilty of. Bad things only happen to other people. And so they just hope for the best. Well, that leaves you in a very vulnerable state of mind. And I would not recommend that on one of the biggest days of your life, particularly with what I've seen for over 21 years. So chapter 1 is going to go talk about what you need to know for labor and delivery, your labor and delivery basics. But the facts that I rely on too as an attorney when I evaluate these cases, or I'm talking to a mom who's in labor, because believe it or not, as a childbirth attorney, I get the calls from labor and delivery. So going, what about this?
Wow.
But
yeah.
a huge chapter of this book that you're not going to find anywhere else that every parent should read before the big day it's chapter 11, and it's the 10 most common facts and issues in a legal baby case. So number one, when I get a case in, almost every case, not all of them, almost every single case, the first words I read are, mom is being induced with Pitocin. Pitocin is the number one most common fact in a legal baby case. So if you're having a Pitocin induction, you better understand that Pitocin and mistakes can go hand in hand. So I've seen the Pitocin inductions gone wrong since February 2003. So I've taken what I've learned from those cases, again, put it in the book. So if mom's getting a Pitocin induction, my book is like a must read. And not only is my book a must read, I'm going to put doula is a must also if you're getting a Pitocin induction, because those are very tricky. And listen, some hospital systems, nurses, great. The problem is everyone does a Pitocin induction different.
So true.
Yeah. So everybody's different with their Pitocin inductions. And so some are more aggressive, some are more slow.
Exactly. Some are very gradual, and some, of the clients that I attend, they just need a whiff of Pitocin. They can be taken off Pitocin, and other times their body doesn't respond well and it's on the highest level and baby isn't doing well. Mom's not doing well. There are very few other options. So.
Right. So and that's why having a doula is huge during a Pitocin induction. But another most common fact, an issue in a legal baby case, is a very busy labor and delivery unit, because the delivery teams, they're running hard and they're running thin. So that is when I have a case, I'll sit down and they'll be like, oh, I remember that day. It was so busy. I hear this all the time. Again,
of course, and you can't control that if other than the planned surgical births and inductions, like whether or not the women's center is going to be busy or it's a slow day. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Because unlike a surgical center where surgery is scheduled at 9, 10, 11, 12, babies come when babies want to come.
Exactly.
So you could walk into, especially in Michigan, you probably know this, they tell me there's busier months.
There are.
Yeah, there's busier months. And what about late morning? Late morning's very busy. So when you're coming in, it's really important to know, hey, is this a busy labor and delivery unit? Because that's where it comes into play, where it becomes very important to work with your delivery team. Now, listen, you're a mom, you're in labor, your mind and body is focused on delivering a baby. So It's important. Yeah, that's why having a doula there to kind of be your advocate and just somebody who knows what's going on is just so important, especially if you walk into something like a busy labor and delivery unit.
Exactly. The continuous support of a doula during labor can, again, increase satisfaction, reduce interventions. If the nurse is busy with other patients or focused more on charting and is unable to provide reassurance or physical support, a doula is necessary. And the partner is often fatigued and overwhelmed and wants to be asking questions. But if no one has time for them, then birth just happens to you and you're not able to make informed decisions.
Oh, 100%. That's why the idea of having you guys, and we're talking about this in pre-show, but I was writing my book and everybody was like, well, you're including doulas. And I'm like, I just don't know that much about doula. Now I do, obviously. This aha moment, wait a minute, the childbirth attorney who only sees bad outcomes doesn't know anything about doulas, because if doulas are involved, seems to be you guys really play a big part in making sure that mom and baby arrives safely and that mom is able to leave with baby. So anyway, but yeah, something again, very common in the legal baby cases, busy labor and delivery unit. You have a doula there. So that makes sure that everything is streamlined and everybody's working together. So that's huge. And then Residents are another big, very common factor in the legal baby cases because these are just, they run the show in some of these hospitals.
Yeah, it depends on the hospital,
goodness.
but the teaching hospitals, yeah. And if they're very busy, then the resident is there versus the OB, so.
Oh yeah, these are just doctors in training. So
Right.
when I meet with residents, because these cases, something happens and it's always years later. So by the time I meet with a resident, they're a practicing doctor.
Sure.
And they'll sit down with me and they'll be like, so we'll be preparing for a deposition, meaning they have to testify in a case. And they'll be like, so do I testify as to what I know now as a doctor or as to what I knew as a resident a few years ago? And I'm like, great question in a legal proceeding, but very scary if that's who's managing your labor. Again,
yes.
if you're, it's important to find out, are you going to have residents involved? But I go through that in my book. But yeah, so going through those different types of lessons is just absolutely huge. And then elaborating on them. I mean, like you said, every labor delivery is different. So
right.
It just depends on which direction yours ends up going, but definitely knowing those lessons. I love knowing about the baby's heart rate. Obviously, baby is inside you. So
right.
Your doctor or your nurse looks at you. They can assess mom just fine. Oh, mom is in pain. I see it in her face. Let's talk. Let's do a diagnosis, whatever. Baby is different. Baby's inside you. So
exactly.
It's hard to, okay, how is baby doing? So that's why I always like to feel the baby's heart rate, because I can look at a fetal monitor and be like, this baby's a rock star or this baby's struggling,
Right.
So, even just not knowing because, fetal monitoring, you don't need to know everything about it, but just knowing some basics. Because it seems like the medical community just wants to keep that knowledge to them. And that just floors me every single time. The first thing I do when someone contacts me in labor and delivery, send me the strip. Take a picture, take a video, send me the strips. I want to see that. And just
right. It makes sense.
So much. That's the best way to know if the baby's doing okay. I had a doctor testify in a case. Only way the baby can talk to a doctor is through their heart rate. So in my book, again, I think that's really important when you're preparing for childbirth, just having a basic understanding of it.
Sure. And of course, their internal monitoring, and I'm sure you're seeing all the differences between the walking monitors, which is doulas, we love to be able to change positions and still keep track of baby, and, internal monitors if there's more concern on how baby is responding.
Actually, I have a chapter in my book on 3 different types of monitors that you're talking about.
Like a Doppler,
really
the handheld.
Giving everybody the good and the bad. So yeah, because you guys I am sure you guys like the Monica. Now there's been a few cases involving the Monica in Michigan that have been very scary. So, I put a couple, I go through the 3 monitors, the benefit and
that is so helpful that you compared.
Yeah. And the disadvantages, I give a couple of case examples and just kind of going through everything. And it's just so parents can make informed choices.
That's what it's all about.
Right. I mean, you're in labor and someone may be like, well, we want to place an internal monitor. What's that? Okay.
Right.
Well,
if they've not taken a childbirth class, they wouldn't know.
You don't know what that is. That could be kind of scary. I
yes.
mean, my niece, they had put one on her and she was like, there's a wire between my legs and I'm hooked to a machine, and I'm like, but it's the most accurate way because I had requested that I want one on, get the internal monitor on during labor. And they were great. They're amazing, amazing staff. They ended up doing a really good job, but
right.
She was like, what is this? It wigged her out.
I'm sure.
And it's so important that you know this, but staying calm and being in harmony in labor, because you just
it's everything.
Avoid.
It affects baby. Yeah. If you're in panic state, labor will take longer if you're in the fight or flight stress mode versus being calm and relaxed and open to it.
Exactly. So just having an understanding of these basics is just huge. Absolutely huge. Because when good decisions are made, healthy babies are born. And ultimately, mom is the decision maker. There is no one starting Pitocin, no one starting an epidural, no one starting an IV, no one's doing a C-section, no one's doing anything without mom's approval. Mom has to approve everything. And then sometimes when you get to the hospital during childbirth, and this happens in, quite a few cases, but sometimes mom's given options. maybe there's a concern about baby. Maybe we need a C-section, maybe not. So it's important that ahead of time, you get ready. I have a chapter on, preparing a birthing plan. And it's not so much preparing the plan where you're going to walk in and give it to the nurse and say, this is what I want to happen.
Right.
That's not what my book's not about that. My book is just the exercise of preparing for birth in the comfort of your own home, learning about it, taking one of your courses, getting knowledge on it, Googling it, asking people, phone calls, but just on, having this plan or just being more prepared than anything, because obviously labor is probably one of the most unpredictable things ever. So trying to have a plan, so you must know it's going to change. That's why it's important to prepare and get ready.
So what are you seeing as far as surgical births versus vaginal and VBACs in your cases? Vaginal birth after cesarean for our listeners who don't understand what a VBAC is.
Hey, Alyssa here. I'm just popping in to tell you about our course called Becoming. Becoming a Mother is your guide to a confident pregnancy and birth, all in a convenient 6-week online program. From birth plans to sleep training and everything in between, you'll gain the confidence and skills you need for a smooth transition to motherhood. You'll get live coaching calls with Kristin and myself, a bunch of expert videos, including chiropractic care, pelvic floor physical therapy, mental health experts, breastfeeding, and much more. You'll also get a private Facebook community with other mothers going through this at the same time as you to offer support and encouragement when you need it most. And then, of course, you'll also have direct email access to me and Kristin, in addition to the live coaching calls. If you'd like to learn more about the course, you can email us at info@goldcoastdoulas.com or check it out at thebecomingcourse.com. We'd love to see you there.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of VBACs, so those are hard for me. And in chapter 7, I actually go through a personal story with my cousin. But, VBACs, I love putting this out there. Now, listen, a lot of people, everything has changed. First, it was this whole, once a C-section, always a C-section. 2010, they're like, C-section rate's really high. Let's consider VBACs. And there's a lot of moms who have successful VBACs, but
right. I've supported many.
Yeah. So the consequence of not having one is old incision scar where you had that C-section tears open, and
right.
that really causes a lot of problems for baby and mom. But the thing that I've always with VBACs is because your uterus, where they make the incision to get the baby out, is inside you. Nobody can assess that to make sure that it healed correctly for a vaginal birth. So that's the thing that always scares me. And we went through that with my niece, I'm sorry, not my niece, it was my cousin. In
okay.
Her story. That chapter starts off with her story. So her doctor really pushed, she's in Florida, and they really pushed for a VBAC or vaginal birth. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what you need to know. And I go through exactly what I told her, which is much different than what her doctor told her, but her doctor wouldn't even schedule her for a C-section. So she goes into labor. The doctor's like, come on. So she calls me, and I'm like, if it was me, I would do, there's also other factors. She's almost 40 years old. Everything heals different.
Yeah. I mean, everything, you have to
whatever.
look at your individual.
There were special factors for her too.
Sure.
So the doctor goes, basically after, C-section, baby arrives safely. And then the doctor comes and sees Allie and was like, thank you for not listening to me. She, entered the abdomen. She's like, the uterus was paper thin and the baby's hair was sticking out. So she's like, you would have absolutely ruptured. Your uterus would have ripped open right there. So anyway, so you say VBAC, I just get scared immediately. But, in the cases, it's hard to talk about because there is a lot of confidentiality with.
Of course, you can.
It's a risk. As a childbirth attorney, I am not a fan of them, but I do know that there has been many people who have successfully done them. And yes, we do see these in cases and whatnot. So. But that's probably, just because I'm still practicing, there's confidentiality associated.
Of course, yes. Just more broadly, are you seeing more cases when it comes to surgical or to vaginal?
Okay,
first?
so basically, this is actually in the book because I have a whole chapter on C-section. So in the baby cases, they are basically attempted vaginal births
that turn to
turn
surgical.
sideways and result in a C-section. That is
Mhm.
my typical baby case. It's like
Okay.
there's a delay in performing the C-section. Something happens during labor. Again, remember Pitocin?
Yes.
Pitocin's usually running. Usually there's an epidural. And then, yeah, and it's, everyone's trying vaginal. So for instance, okay, I've never had a case involving an elective C-section at 39 weeks. Actually, this is in the book. Most baby lawyers just have 39-week C-sections. Elective C, because because of what we've seen. So,
right.
Yeah, no, and that's
you're
like
seeing the worst case scenarios, of course. So you would try to err on the side of safety, and yes.
Now, I'm not sure I'd recommend it. I had 3 C-sections and they're rough, but, and I don't know if my kids will do that. I don't think they'll do that route, which again, hence my get this information out there. So at least,
exactly. So they can prep. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, everything's usually attempted vaginal birth that ends in a C-section is your typical childbirth case.
Interesting. So what other tips in your book would be helpful for prepping for birth and baby?
Okay, number 1, know your delivery team. So that's another huge lesson in the book. The delivery team is responsible for bringing your baby safely into this world. And in my cases, it is the delivery team's care that is at issue. It is the biggest part of the case. It is the most analyzed part of the case. But having a good delivery team is so important. You have to understand is that while you may be able to pick your doctor or pick the practice, maybe there's a couple doctors, delivery team, yeah, that's who's scheduled to work that day.
Exactly.
So,
you may have never met them.
Yep. Most of the time you've never met them. Again, important to have a doula there because doula you've met, you've built a little relationship with, somebody you're comfortable with, because you can walk into labor and delivery and it can be luck of the draw. In my book, I talk about a case and there were 2 nurses in the case. One of the nurses was the primary nurse who did something wrong, but there was 2 nurses. One was a nurse who was 20 years experience, and she was literally born to be a labor and delivery nurse. She's amazing. I loved her. Nurse number 2. She had just finished training. She had just been on her own in labor and delivery and had figured out she hates labor and delivery and was looking for a different job.
Oh, so no.
I'm sure everybody can figure out whose care was at issue in that case. And the good nurse, the experienced one, was just trying to help. But that day at the hospital, when the patients walked in, it was luck of the draw.
Right.
One got the 20-year experienced nurse who was a dream, and one got the other nurse. So it's important that if you get that nurse that you're not a fan of, that you're like, hi, I would like a new nurse. You don't your delivery team is so important. I cannot stress that enough. So in my book, again, I'm like, these are your players of your delivery team. This is what you need to know. Now, again, you're a mom in labor. So, it's important that you have somebody there that can, I call it the baby advocate who can, whether it's your husband, you look at your husband, you give him the nod, like, get me a new nurse. Because here's the deal. Or you have a doula and you're like, hi, I need a new nurse. And then that's it. And then you go back to being comfortable and focusing on you and baby. But here's the deal. Here's the deal with the nurses. That day, all the nurses on that floor knew labor and delivery nurse sucked, for lack of a better word. So if mom would have said something, the other to a charge nurse, or I tell you in my book exactly who to approach, but if that mom would have said something, other nurses would have done what they do best and they would have stepped in and helped. But the other nurses, they're not in charge of hiring. They can't just open the door. Door, say, hi, if you hate your nurse, let me know. I'll get you a new one. It doesn't work like that. You have to say something, but literally just the nod of the head, whatever. make sure you like your nurse. And there are so many great labor and delivery nurses.
I agree.
Yes, they're amazing humans. There's a special breed of people. I love my labor and delivery nurses, but sometimes in my cases, it's the ones that don't have a lot of experience and are not really, they're just not really into it. So.
Right. And we do talk about that as doulas, that, our clients are consumers and they have a choice if it's not a good fit. So they can request a different nurse. And it's rare in my career that I've seen that personally happen. But just to know that you have options and you don't have to just tolerate your care team is a huge thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then also, so I have a whole chapter on the delivery team. And then another big part is I have a whole chapter on doctors, picking the good doctor. So I have analyzed doctors, OBGYNs in particular, now for almost 21 years. I mean, it's semi-creepy. I'm just not going to lie. Like I have, and so I took all of my creepy knowledge because I have to. Listen, I got to stick these people in front of a jury.
Of course.
Is the jury going to like them or, what's going on? So I've taken the knowledge that I've gained from just all my interactions with doctors, questions to ask them, things to think about, and just did a whole chapter on them. There's so many different aspects that are so important for moms to consider and think about when they're picking their doctor. Because ultimately, the doctor is the head of your delivery team. They're captain of the ship. So they are the ones that are making the recommendations. But, you know this. Doctors are not just hanging out at the bedside. Doctors,
they check in. They're busy with other patients. So.
Oh yeah. If they even check in, some just come in for the labor and sometimes they miss that. So it's so important that you have this good doctor that you trust because they have to be able to communicate with you because think about how they're communicating with you during the pregnancy. I mean, are they good communicators? Like think about it because once you go into labor, they're relying on the nurse or the residents to communicate what's happening. And, if they're good communicators, awesome. They're going to be able to get a good idea of what's going on with you during labor and delivery. But if they're not, it's like, so there's just a lot of things to think about with doctors. And again, a lot of times it's their care too that's at issue in these cases because they had the ship. So
they do. So, even if you're working with a nurse midwife, I mean, the OB would oversee if, things turned to be a surgical birth or if a vacuum was used, for example, it would be the OB. Yeah.
And then I think probably this could be one of the last ones. There's so much in the book. we are just hitting the surface, but I think huge one is having a baby advocate. And so I have a whole chapter on because you need to focus on you need to focus on baby, staying calm. So whether it is husband or grandma or doula, I really like doula because you guys know what's going on. You know how to keep everybody calm.
Right.
But having that advocate for you, just this second set of eyes in case you do walk in and it's busy that day.
Absolutely. And then there are patient advocates, as you know, and different resources within the hospital system. Yeah.
So, right. You guys know so much. I would say on my baby advocate list as the top one would be you guys, but it's just the second set of eyes because you just really need it just, as labor progresses to help with, again, talking to the delivery team, just making sure everybody's on the same page. And it's nice with a doula because you speak their language. Exactly. So you know a little bit more. You can ask the right questions. You can make sure that mom's being informed with all of her options because maybe mom is surprised with a couple of options, but when it's here are your options, but you have one person explaining it. Well, is that person, how are they doing that day? Are they a good communicator that day? I mean, I don't know about you, but I have off days. So,
of course, we all do.
Yeah. So it's nice having a doula that you trust where, then you can kind of bounce those. Okay, well, I have two decisions because sometimes, and I talk about this in the book, where two decisions, can really result in a different outcome. just talking about the importance
So true.
of decision making. Yeah. And because I compare 3 different cases where it was the same decisions, or not same decisions, the same options, different decisions, different outcomes. And it's kind of, whoa. So the importance of decision making, I mean, again, you're making good decisions, you're making informed decisions. I mean, your chances of having a healthy baby are so important. So having that baby advocate, especially when you're in labor, is just huge. So that was, I think that's like a whole chapter. And if you do choose to have grandma or, somebody else, at the end, it's like, okay, make sure your baby advocate knows this stuff. There's 5 things the baby advocate should know. Now, it wouldn't apply to you guys because it'd be stuff that you already know. So
sure.
It's like you're already prepped to be a baby advocate, right. With what you do.
And grandparents and friends, if they're the support person, they can often attend a childbirth class. Say there isn't a partner. So if you want them to be informed, it's another option.
Oh, that's a great option. Grandmas are like the best advocates ever. So expecting grandparents, they have this wisdom and they've been through it, and and
so
it's like
true.
The circle of life playing out like right in front of them, watching their own child have their first baby or their second baby. It's awesome.
Yeah, we teach a grandparents class. It's both virtual and in person, and we love it. So much has changed in just keeping up with safe sleep and feeding and all of the new gadgets and tech items related to parenting and apps for pregnancy and so on. So
yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Well, I could talk to you forever, Gina, but we must wrap up. So if you would fill us in again about how to reach you, what social channels you're on, and again, how to find your book.
Oh, great. So ginamundy.com is the best resource because it's going to have my book. But, I also have a childbirth blog that I just recently started. So actually, my book was so long that it was actually cut in half. So this is only the first part of the book. But what this book is it's focused on childbirth. The next book is supposed to be focused on, I took everything out about pregnancy and whatnot. So this childbirth blog is awesome because if I forgot to include something about childbirth, I'm like, blog.
Perfect. Yes.
And then, so pregnancy, and then I've been taking some of my pregnancy content. That's really important because it is hard to get a book out, and posting that, just different topics that parents, expecting parents need to know. So that
I love it.
My book, but it has also like some great resources for expecting parents. And then Amazon, so ginamundy.com, GINAMUNDY.com. And then you can always go to Amazon, and if you just type my name in Amazon, it comes right up.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. But you know what? I forget to do this because I've never been a social media person. This is very difficult for me.
Oh, sure.
But I am now. I'm on Instagram. I think I have like maybe 1,400 followers. I'm like, oh, great. So I've been posting. So a lot of times if I'm on a podcast or I'm on something, it's popping up on Instagram. So it's definitely a good way to find the different podcasts I'm on. So it's just Gina Mundy, and then Facebook is Gina Mundy, author. And again, that's just different stuff that's popping up. Sometimes I'll like post my blogs and stuff like that too.
Sure. Well, we will link to all your social sites and your website and the book on our blog and social media. So thank you so much, Gina.
Thank you for having me. What a great conversation. I love the work that you guys are doing. You are definitely helping babies come into this world much safer. So I thank you for doing what you do.
And thank you for creating such a helpful book and for fighting for families. So your work is so important.
Oh, thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Ask the Doulas. For more information about Gold Coast Doulas, visit us on our website, goldcoastdoulas.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Thank you. Remember, these moments are golden.